Hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make some apple and almond tarts. So it's going to be a little pastry base with some stewed apples drained of most of their liquid, covering the bottom, and then with an almond cake type filling going on top of that, and they will bake up into little tarts. So it's actually a very simple recipe. Takes you a little bit of time, but it's very simple. So I'll go on to the ingredients. And for the pastry cases, I have 150 grams, which is 1 cup based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of plain flour. I have 85 grams, 6 tablespoons of cold butter, which I've cut into cubes. I have 8 grams, 1 tablespoon of icing sugar. And I have the yolk from 1 medium egg, that would be large in the USA. And then to go on top of that, I have 60 millilitres of apple, which I have simply cooked down in a pan until there's not very much liquid, and I've processed them. You could use apple sauce if you wanted to, or apple puree, but if it's quite wet, I would put it into a pan and cook it down a little bit just to get some of the moisture out of it. So I have 60 millilitres, quarter of a cup of that. And then to go on the top for the cake, the almond cake part, I have 75 grams, 3/4 of a cup of ground almonds, 25 grams, 2 tablespoons minus 1 teaspoon of softened unsalted butter, 100 grams, 7 tablespoons of cream cheese, 125 grams, half a cup plus 2 tablespoons of caster sugar, 9 grams, 1 tablespoon of plain flour. I have the yolks from 2 medium eggs, again large in the USA. One of my yolks broke, but that's fine because it's only going into the mixture. I'm going to use about half a teaspoon of almond extract, 2.5 millilitres. And then, if I need it to loosen the mixture a little bit, up to a tablespoon, 15 millilitres of milk. In the flour, I also have a pinch of salt, just to help bring out the flavour. So that's all the ingredients. And the first thing we're going to do is to make the pastry so that we can roll that out. And I'm going to make the pastry in the little chopper bowl of my immersion blender. That will work very well. So I'll put the flour in, and then I'll sprinkle over the icing sugar. That's just to give a little bit of sweetness to the pastry. And I'll just stir that around to get the icing sugar mixed into the flour just a little bit, and then I'll put in my chilled butter, and again I'm just going to coat that in flour as I put it in so that it doesn't stick together with other clumps of butter. And with the butter in, I'm simply going to process that until it's turned into a fine breadcrumb like texture. And that's good like that. So then I'm going to put in my egg yolk. I'll just break that, but I'll put in the egg yolk. And I'm going to process that until the mixture clumps together, or starts to clump together into a dough. And I can see that that's beginning to clump together. So that's all I need to do with the mixer. So then I'm going to tip that out onto a work surface so that we can roll it out. So I've tipped that dough out, and I'm just going to squeeze it in my hand just to form it into a dough. And it doesn't take much effort at all, as you can see. And then I'm going to roll that out to a thickness of about 3 millimeters, an eighth of an inch. And that needs to be rolled out on a lightly floured surface. And before I roll it out, I'll just mention that I'm going to use these little tart cases here, and that will work well. They're silicone, and the pastry will come out quite easily. But you could use a little bun tin or tart tin like that if you have one. If you don't have something like that, you could use a muffin tin. But when you roll the pastry out, you don't want to roll it out to completely fill the muffin tin. The pastry just needs to come halfway up the sides of the muffin tin, and that would be good to make these tarts. So we'll flour the surface and roll out the pastry quite thinly to that thickness of 3 millimeters. And don't worry if the pastry cracks as you're working with it. It's soft and you can easily patch it. And with that rolled out, I'm simply going to cut out some rounds, and I'm cutting them out about 9 centimeters. To line my tart cases, and then I will re-roll the pastry again and do it again. So with the pastry rolled out like that, I'm going to push that down into the tart case so that it reaches the bottom, and then I'm going to press around the edges and cut off any excess that I have. And I'll do that with the remainder and re-roll the pastry to do more. I've rolled my pastry out, and I did 6 in my silicone mould, and I did 6 in the bun pan just to show you that you can do them like that as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take up to a teaspoon of apple and put it into the base of each one. So I'm just going to spread that on the base. It doesn't have to be precise. And with that spread over the base like that, I'm going to put those into the fridge, and I'm going to chill them as I preheat my oven to 200 degrees Celsius, that's 180 Celsius with a fan, 400 Fahrenheit. And as that's happening, we'll also go on to make the filling to go on the top. So for the filling, I'm going to put my cream cheese and the butter and the sugar into a bowl. And I'm going to whisk those together until they're nicely creamed together. And I'm going to use my hand mixer for this. So that's good like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my egg yolks. And whisk those in as well. That's good like that. And then I'll put in my half a teaspoon of almond extract. You could use more, it's a matter of taste. Almond extract tends to be a very strong flavour. And with that, I'm going to add in my salt and my flour. I'm just going to whisk those until they're fully combined. And then I'm going to add in the ground almonds, and if the mixture starts to look as though it's too thick, I will add in just a little drop of milk, a bit at a time, until I have a consistency that is quite loose and will sort of almost pour out of an ice cream scoop. And I think that's good enough like that. So I'll just scrape down the sides of the bowl like that, and that's ready to go into our prepared cases. My oven is now just about preheated, so I'm going to take the mixture and I'm going to just pour it into each of the prepared cases, distributing it fairly evenly. And with each of the cases filled, not quite to the brim, I'm going to put those into the oven and I'm going to bake them for between 25 and 30 minutes. And they should rise up and dome, and they will then probably sink a little bit and they may crack on the top. It tends to happen with this type of tart, but that's fine. But after 25 to 30 minutes, the pastry should be cooked through, the top should be nice and brown. So then I'll take them out of the oven and allow them to cool down on a wire rack. Then I'll come back and show you the results. I baked the apple and almond tarts for 30 minutes. They rose up with a nice big dome on the top. Then, as I suggested they would, they sank down and have little creases in them. There's a little dent, and that's what happens with these tarts. So, but they baked quite nicely. This is what they look like. So they've coloured nicely, and I'll show you the underside so you can see the pastry's well cooked as well. So I'll have a taste of this one. Very, very good. The combination of apple and almond flavour works very well. The pastry is soft and almost melts in your mouth, and the top, where it browns like that, becomes slightly caramelised as well, so that has a little bit of a chew to it. So this is actually quite an easy recipe, even though it takes a little bit of messing about. And as I said, you can do it in a bundt tin, you can do it half filled in a muffin tin, or whatever type of tins you have really. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.